Melty Blood's home has always been on PC. It only makes sense. Type Moon made visual novels on PC, so their fighting game spin-off should also be on PC. However, Melty Blood proved to be more popular than French Bread or Type Moon could have ever expected. This was in part due to how truly unique Melty Blood was at the time. With a certified hit on their hands, it only makes sense that the next step would be to get Melty Blood into arcades. Melty Blood Act Cadenza was the first revision to hit arcades. In the transition from PC to arcade, it was important to get things right on the first try, so going with the Sega Naomi arcade board was a safe bet. The Sega Naomi was no stranger to fighting games, with all-time classics like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Guilty Gear X running on the hardware. Needless to say, the arcade port was a huge success, so the next logical step would be to bring Melty Blood to home consoles. Melty Blood Act Cadenza hit consoles exclusively for the PlayStation 2, in Japan only. Like many other arcade ports to the PlayStation 2, the port is extremely accurate, except there is one key difference. The PlayStation 2 version of Act Cadenza is considered its own version, which has unique balance changes not found in the arcade release. However, if you prefer to play as close to arcade as possible, you have the option to switch to the original balancing if you so feel inclined. I'll admit, I'm not familiar enough with Act Cadenza to tell you what the major changes are because the version I played is a later revision, which I'll get to in time. When jumping into a match, you'll notice right away that the game feels arcade perfect, but it does not sound arcade perfect.
どうなってる
私を殺した責任取ってもらうんだから
くそどうなってる
私を殺した責任取ってもらうんだからファイト
The sound effects and voice lines are extremely compressed, but only during battles. Wing quotes and arcade interactions remain uncompressed. In terms of content, Act Cadenza is exactly what you'd expect from any fighting game. Arcade, versus mode, survival mode, and training. The only feature it's missing is online, and it would be on par with a modern fighting game. There are some cosmetic differences with the user interface, character select screen, and attack effects, but it's more like a, that's neat, than a substantial change. I do prefer the character select screen in this version compared to the PC version. Something I really like about this version is that the announcer will call out the character you pick when you select them on the character select screen. I can finally learn the canon pronunciation of Aoko Azoyoi's name. Melty Blood's approach to story was different from any other fighting game at the time. It was presented in the visual novel style Type Moon is famous for. Unfortunately, you won't find that in any version of Melty after React, which is confusing because Fate Stay Night would get a release on PS2 a little less than a year later. The arcade stories are nice for character interactions, but it would have been a nice bonus to have that full visual novel experience right there on your PlayStation 2. Act Cadenza comes with 3 new playable characters, 2 of which can be played from the start, Aoko and Koma, with the third, Neko Arc Chaos, being unlockable by completing arcade mode with Neko Arc. Neko Arc has to be unlocked as well to earn the privilege of playing as the Funny Cat. You have to beat arcade mode with all 20 characters, a Herculean task for some, but a trivial matter for Neko Arc enthusiasts. When you beat arcade mode, you unlock it in the gallery, along with some CGs that would make some cool wallpapers. In the gallery, you could also listen to the game's soundtrack. I loved modes like this back in the day. It was really the only way to listen to video game soundtracks. We're spoiled now with streaming services and YouTube. Also, you can unlock character voices, but there is a glaring flaw with this feature. It's voiced in Japanese, and as a native English speaker, I find it difficult to follow. Aside from the noticeable sound compression, Act Cadenza PS2 is a great port and a serviceable way to play some Melty. is what I would say if this port wasn't shafted so hard just a year later. Act Cadenza version B would be released after the PS2 version for arcades, with all of the balancing of the PlayStation 2 version and White Len as a fully fleshed out character. Okay, no big deal. The PlayStation 2 owners are just missing out on one character, right? Not quite. The PC version of Act Cadenza would release with even more features and changes, making the PlayStation 2 version obsolete. Credit where credit is due. They did a good job on this one, and they would try their hand again with Melty's next revision. Actress again. Actress again would hit arcades first and then quickly be ported to the PlayStation 2, again as a Japanese exclusive. Actress Again's PlayStation 2 port is virtually identical to Act Cadenza's. It has all the same features. The audio is still compressed during battles, but it's not as bad as Act Cadenza's, and it's clear that the developers tried to address the issue the best way that they could. If you bought the limited edition of the game, you'd receive a copy of All Over Melty Blood, a 2-CD soundtrack that contains almost every song in Melty Blood. Roa is one of the new characters in Actress Again, along with Reese Bife, Stridberg. The other characters would need to be unlocked. Seifuku Akiya. The third Akiya could be unlocked by completing the arcade mode with both Akiyas. Mecha Hasuhi and Kohaku, unlocked by beating arcade mode with Neko Arc, and Mecha Hasui and Neko Arc, unlocked by beating the game with Miyako. The PlayStation 2 version of Actress Again is a milestone for the Melty Blood series because it introduces its first crossover character from Kara no Kyokai, Ryogi Shiki. Ryogi would pave the way for characters like Saber to be included in Melty Blood Type Lumina. Ryogi was a great addition to Actress Again, and I hope one day she finds her way back into the Melty Blood series. There is one last character I failed to mention, exclusive to the PlayStation 2 version of Actress Again. Archetype Earth. She can be unlocked by beating arcade mode with all characters. This version of Archetype is unique to this version of the game and plays nothing like she does in current code. In this version, she uses the Eclipse Moon style, a style reserved for boss characters, which is appropriate because she's basically a super version of Arcuade with powered up special moves and Archetype's voice lines. Quite the underwhelming reward, although it probably wasn't intended to be this way. French Bread most likely meant to include her in a full playable form, but ran out of time because in the files for this very same PlayStation 2 version, there are assets for powered CL, which means both were likely to be intended for the PlayStation 2 release, but were pushed back to Actress Again's next revision. However, what if I were to tell you I found a character that you're not even supposed to play? And I'm not talking about boss characters like Dust of Osiris. Remember how I said Archetype only had the Eclipse Moon style? With this trick, I'll show you how you can pick her in her Crescent Moon style. Step 1, go to Versus mode. Step 2, select Archetype and then deselect her. Step 3, keep hitting random select until you get Archetype again. Now, instead of Eclipse style, her only style should be Crescent Moon. Unfortunately, this isn't some beta version of Archetype, but a glitched out version of Crescent Arcuade with broken effects. She's missing a lot of animations, but all of her moves work. Funnily enough, her broken throw animation looks really cool and almost as if it was intentional. This was definitely left in as a developer oversight when developing Archetype. It's a really cool glitch, and I'm genuinely surprised that this actually worked. This really is something you're only gonna find with Melty Blood on PlayStation 2. Actress Again PlayStation 2 is the definitive way to play Melty Blood on the system, but given that you only have two choices, it only makes sense that you'd pick the one with more content. the PlayStation 2 version of Actress Again would be ported back to arcades in early 2010, but instead of sticking to the Sega Naomi arcade board, they would upgrade to the Sega Ring-Wide arcade board, which would also go on to host French Bread's next fighting game series, Under Night in Birth, as well as the Guilty Gear Xrd series. The change in arcade board could be why Current Code never got a console port, but really, we'll never know. I just want to put you in the shoes of a Melty Blood fan at the time. Say you enjoyed the PlayStation 2 versions and you wanted to play Actress Again Current Code at home. Well, unfortunately, the only way you could do that was by buying the Carnival Phantasm Season 3 Limited Edition Blu-ray, which came packaged with Actress Again Current Code's PC version. Which is quite the investment because anime Blu-rays are expensive. Thankfully, we have the Steam release and the Community Edition, so now more people than ever before can enjoy some Melty Blood without having to buy an anime. The PlayStation 2 ports of Melty Blood are an interesting part of the series' history. Unlike other fighters that dumped the arcade version on consoles, the PlayStation 2 ports of Melty Blood would influence the next arcade release, which would build off of them. Release in arcade, port to PS2, port back to arcade, and finish on PC. That was the cycle of Melty Blood. As a consequence, the PlayStation 2 versions will always be inferior to the complete PC versions. Although, we wouldn't have those PC versions without the PS2 versions to build off of, and I'm sure those PlayStation 2 sales helped fund said future revisions. Who knows where the Melty Blood series would be without Melty Blood on PlayStation 2? Kohaku Gaming.